the Inner Practice, where we explore the art of healing, one story at a time. I'm your host, Jackie Vandertoon. Today we're joined by Amanda Halls, an athletic therapist, yoga teacher, and lifelong student of the human spirit. Amanda's experience with yoga began at just 14, when she met a family who lived their yoga, driving her early curiosity about spirituality, leading her to take courses related to religion and culture at university where she studied kinesiology. Her professional path took her into the world of athletic therapy, where she worked with high-performance athletes in organizations like Field Hockey Canada and Sheridan College. On tour with the national field hockey team, she found new joy in leading yoga sessions. What began as Beyoncé-inspired playlist soon became a team ritual, and eventually her own path to deeper study through her teacher training. At that time, Amanda had no plans to teach yoga or meditation, but life had other intentions. When illness struck, everything changed, and what followed was a profound journey of loss, reclamation, and healing. From seizures and breathing challenges to finding healing through pranayama and self-compassion, Amanda's story is one of courage, creativity, and resilience. Today she reminds us that healing isn't about returning to who we were, but about rediscovering who we are, breath by breath. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. You and I go back many years, and I always remember our conversations infusing, talking about yoga and our clinical practice. And it was something that I think both of us shared, but didn't know how much yoga would impact our lives. So I'm so excited that you're here to share your story.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Amanda, I am really curious because you found one of your best friends really introduced you to the concept when you were much younger, to living yoga, which I found that to be fascinating because as a 14-year-old, I don't know if I would have the brain power or the thought to see what that means. Can you tell me a little bit more about someone you met living yoga?
Yes, I was actually even younger than that because my best friend Joshna, I met her in grade 7. And so what are you in grade 7, like 12? And her family, I was at their house all the time. Like sleepovers were the thing for us. And her father had a special area of his house where he would sit. And at the time, I didn't know that he was meditating it was kind of like studying. And there'd be a whole bunch of beautiful artwork. There would be beautiful statues, beautiful things there. And it was like a very sacred spot. And you could feel it. There was a very specific incense that he would burn. And I was actually introduced to Swamiji at their home, which now I realize is like a massive honor to have someone like that at your home and being hosted. And I got to meet him at a very young age, and he gave me blessed coins. And I didn't know what I was experiencing, but because I had grown up in the church, I knew I was experiencing something holy. And I was very, very lucky at that point to be a part of the Anglican Church. And our minister at the time was a priest named Father Gregory Kerr Wilson. And he was very young at the time, and all of his homilies, talked about Star Trek and things that we found very interesting. He was very, very relatable. And so all of us really had a very strong connection. And I say us as in the children and the young people in the church. And when I brought this information to him, he's he's the bishop out in Capel in Saskatoon. And so that's where he is now. But at the time, he accepted and encouraged me to go on a journey and to ask questions and to deepen. If I had that experience, it meant something to me. And he encouraged me to kind of explore that further. and that it's important for me to go and understand who I am and what the world is and have a broader perspective on things. Um, and so I did. I felt like I had the opportunity to be immersed in that, even though I didn't know what it was at the
That's
time.
pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing
Mhm.
at such a young age that your eyes were open to there's
Mhm.
something more here.
Mhm.
And shout out to your priest as well to allow you to explore that.
Yeah.
What a gift he would have given a young child.
Mhm. Yeah, he was very forward thinking and still is, and very understanding that the world needs to be explored, that life is a journey, and that we weave these stories and these experiences together. And he didn't need to tell me what the end product would be because he didn't know. He just encouraged me, yeah, you know what? These are things that you need to kind of look into, explore, figure out. Just the same way that people explore, read, look into the Bible. It's the same sort of idea that you have to know these things for yourself.
Yeah, really deepened, and again, I'm thinking back to when I was 14. That's a really profound path to open up at such a young age.
Yeah. And Joshna's mother actually was her name's Darshni. She was the first person to ever give me a yoga mat. And so um, I, I didn't really know and didn't really ask that many questions at the time. But it was something that, it gets infused in your DNA. When you're young and you're in someone else's culture and you're experiencing that culture for all that it is, not just one little snippet, um, it changes you and it
Yeah.
plants seeds that grow. And later on down the road, for me, those seeds started to bloom.
Yeah. Can you share with me, because you said they lived yoga. Now, as someone who may not have known what yoga was, what was it about them that was different than other people?
Well, I think it was just spirituality from a different lens that I hadn't truthfully experienced before. Being younger, these I had a lot of friends who we had sleepovers and stuff like that, and a lot of people and friends who they didn't have any spiritual practices. They didn't go to church. They didn't have any, you know, that's fine. But when I was at their house, I could feel something different that was similar to what I was dealing with an Anglican upbringing, but different. And so they were Hindu. So, I mean, obviously, yoga is rooted. If we look at the roots of yoga, it originates in Hinduism. So we have to understand that some of the stuff that I know to be yoga now was stuff that I was seeing them living in their lives all the time. The celebrations that they would do, the people that they would devote time to, the readings, the scripture on the walls, all of these things, and even meeting Swamiji. This is important information that I realize now that yoga was infused within everything that they did.
Hmm. Can you reconcile or like, did it make you struggle with your Anglican faith, or did it add to it, or were they two separate entities?
No, it never made me struggle because I was brought up understanding about different religions. I have a very diverse family myself, and I had a lot of friends that did have different spiritual practices. We went to a variety of different churches. I knew that Catholicism wasn't the same as Anglicanism, wasn't the same as Baptist. It wasn't the same. So there's so many different layers. It was not, I was smart enough to understand that this is a wide variety of things. And I like to study. I am a knowledge, not a person that takes in knowledge. So I'm always questioning even what's put in front of me. So it was sort of like just opening my eyes to another layer as
Yeah.
opposed to causing me to shift. And the more that you understand about Hinduism, they don't ask you to denounce the gods of other people. That's not part of Hinduism. So there was freedom for me to be who I was while I was in their home and they were being who they were.
Right. Right. What a beautiful gift to be able to meld these cultures together and learn from each other instead of creating a divide.
Hmm.
I mean, I see that as someone who's so young being like, what a great educational opportunity. Instead of seeing a divide, you're seeing a melding.
Yes. And in fact, like Joshna is the godparent to my children and came to church to baptize those children as a Hindu, as a
Oh,
devoted love of life and my children. And she's both of their godmothers. So, yeah, that's it.
so it sounds to me like you were really interested in a spiritual component, which carried through to university as well, where you took those courses in religion along with your kin degree. So
Hmm.
it sounds like you've always been a real spiritual person
Yes.
from the get-go.
Yes, I have been. I wouldn't, yeah, I'm a spiritual person. I wouldn't say that I necessarily um, adopt this particular religion and stick to it word for word. But a lot of the times I would go to the church and be there by myself, even when I was at university, because I went to Laurier. And a lot of people don't know that Laurier was Waterloo Lutheran University and has a huge Masters of Divinity program that's there. So I would go to the church on campus and just sit by myself in holy spaces. That's what I like to do. And commune with God in a way, or universe, or whatever. Just sit there and feel the energy of the space, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's always brought me a lot of peace, but my relationship has always been my relationship, not necessarily a community relationship.
I love that, Amanda. I love that. Honestly, I do. I wish so many people had that peace within, you know, seeking a purpose, seeking a spiritual being. It's very individual. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes I think we get wrapped up in dogma, which it sounds like, you know, you never did, which I love. Amanda, taking a little bit of a different path here, you studied to become an athletic therapist,
Yes.
which is how you and I both met. What drew you to that profession? Because we've been talking about spirituality, and then you've taken a path into the sciences, medicine component. How did that journey kind of come to fruition?
I think both of those things have always been apparent in me, if anybody ever asked. But it was people who know me well know why those two things exist within me. But I am a scientist and I do have a thirst for that knowledge, right? But I've always had a thirst for knowledge, period. So I look at it in a holistic sense. I studied kinesiology because I love sports and I played sports myself. But I very easily could have studied political science as well, which is something that my family thought I was going to move into, and I moved more into the sports route because it's what I wanted. It's a path I wanted to follow. And while I was at Laurier, I met Jamie Carlson, who was an athletic therapist at the time. I originally wanted to study sports medicine. So when I got a chance to sit with Jamie and realized that I really wanted to be more of a part of the healing journey rather than the diagnostic journey, that's when I started shadowing him and spending basically all my time in the clinic. And I did that while I was working or while I was studying at Sheridan, or sorry, at Laurier. So Jamie was like, yeah, you're going to Sheridan because that's where you should go because that's where he went. So after I finished studying at Laurier, I only applied to Sheridan. I didn't apply to different schools. I was like, I'm going to go here or I'm not going to go here and I'm going to go do something else. And I got into Sheridan. And so I actually had my entrance meeting, which we used to do back in the day with Ann Hartley, who is a mentor of mine and has deeply influenced my style of treatment. And I was, yeah, very lucky to have been accepted at Sheridan and following that athletic therapy pathway.
Yeah, when I met you, I see you having tentacles because you had fingers everywhere. Working with
I
Field
do.
Hockey Canada, working box lacrosse, being a clinician at Sheridan, supervising students, teaching. You had a lot on your plate. and you're also married. And when I met you, you were you one of your kids, or you were pregnant. I can't remember. Anyways, but you gave everywhere. And I remember being concerned about you because you were giving so much. Why is that about you? Is that you? Or
Mhm.
like, why did you have your hands in so many pockets?
Well, I think it's like multifold, to be honest. As as you kind of noted earlier, I'm one of those people who asks a lot of questions. And when I get a question, I have to get to the answer or get closer to it. I'm not somebody who can just let it sit. Put a pin in it. That's not my personality. I'm like, oh, I wonder why that is. Like dog with a bone, I've got to go figure it out. But also, as an athletic therapist, clinical work and field work, I loved both of them. I couldn't say, oh, I only want to be a field practitioner. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do both. And my path led me to Sheridan, but I started out as a clinical practitioner and always worked in the field. I never gave that up. I never gave that up until I became sick, and then I had to give those things up. But I also do think that sometimes this busyness is rooted out of trauma,
Mm.
because we don't allow ourselves or our children a space to just be. We live in a society that rewards busyness and rewards overworking. And like we just push, 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 push. I really recognize this in sports because I grew up in sport and in dance myself. And what my children have to do compared to what I had to do as an athlete, oh my gosh, it's so different now, Jackie. It is like the kids have to basically sell their soul at the age of 5.
Right,
And this busyness is there, but it's also rewarded. So
right.
it became something that, like, when I was in high school, I did everything. I did everything. I
Hmm.
was on 3 different teams. I was on the prom committee. I was the president of the school. I was in band. I was in drama. And I did all of the things
Hmm.
um, because I didn't know how to just be.
Yeah. Yeah, and and I remember the students, because they absolutely love you, and you have such a heart and such a giving heart, and you could it I don't think it would matter what time it was. If somebody needed you, you would be there. And you gave and you gave and you gave. Were you taking anything for you? Were you giving yourself some time during that kind of period at Sheridan, Box Lacrosse, Field Hockey Canada?
I think I was to an extent, but there is a limit to how much time we have in a day and how much time I was carving out for myself. So a lot of my individual time, I would multitask my way through that, right? In order to have this extra time. As a therapist, if you're standing on the bench, you're not checking your phone, you're not doing that. You are in the game, you are zoned in. So that time had to be blocked off, but I didn't have the same reverence for the things that I would do for myself,
Mm.
right? And so I also think that sometimes we believe that there's some sort of practices that we can do for ourselves out there that can out hustle that 60-hour work week. No, it's not possible. I'm here to tell everybody who thinks that it is. If somebody is telling you that they are a high performer, I work 60 hours a week, I do, and these are the practices that keep me going, you're barely keeping your head above water with those practices. You are not showing yourself love and compassion. You are overgiving. And when we tend to overgive, it comes from a place of not feeling worthy of your own time.
Mm. I love that you're saying this, because one of the things I struggle with, because I love podcasts, and the real latest thing, and I even have some books up here, Peter Attila, um, all this biohacking, all these
Yeah,
things to make you better, all of these, supplements, cold water immersion, um, like it's overwhelming to me to add
yeah.
all of this into my life.
Jackie,
And
if you understood how much time it takes me just to live, just to show up here right now for you,
Mhm.
just to kind of live a somewhat normalized life at home where I don't see a lot of people and I don't have a lot of things. Just to do that is an enormous amount of effort that people don't realize they aren't doing.
Yeah.
You can't hack your way around that.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these podcasts, I hear some themes that come through, and the mask, right? Like the mask has come through quite a few times where we wear this mask externally, but internally we're cracking.
Yeah.
But we have to put this mask on. I often say I'm a great actor because
Yeah.
nobody would know what I'm feeling inside because I'm
Yeah.
so good at that mask. I've been
Yeah.
wearing it for so long.
Yeah.
So, Amanda, you became ill. Um, can you take us back to that moment when your illness began?
So it would have been 2016 when I first started noticing the symptoms, and they came on very, very suddenly. I had I just it literally came out of nowhere. Um, I had just had ankle surgery because I had hurt myself falling in a pothole at Sheridan. Next, a totally different story, but I had had ankle surgery and it wasn't healing. And it was kind of weird because it just wasn't healing properly. And I was doing all the things. And I had surgery in May, and the surgery didn't really heal until August. And um, September, probably about 10 days after it healed up, I started noticing my first symptoms. And my first symptoms were like breathlessness, like I was trying to climb the stairs and it just exhausted me. And it was really the beginning of September. And my philosophy at the time was like, oh, I had sat too close to the fire while we were camping and maybe just got a lot of smoke. And that was kind of my first set of symptoms. And it just kind of got worse and worse and worse from there. And so, of course, you start down the journey of, blood work and different things like this to try and figure out, am I anemic? What's going on here? But I also wasn't listening. I wouldn't stop doing the work because no one had told me, oh, you need to stop. No one had told me maybe you need to rest. There was never a conversation about that. So I just kept getting more and more sick. And in 2019, I was at Sheridan and I experienced I was probably in the middle of sort of like a transischemic attack at that point, but something happened. And I was like, my arm wasn't working, my face and stuff. And so remember saying to my coworker, Nicole, I gotta go. My arm is acting weird. And she's like, do you want me to drive you to the hospital? And I was like, no, right? I got this, it's fine. By the time I got to my doctor's office, like I couldn't really move that side of my body. And I crawled into the doctor's office and had a seizure that really had a massive impact on me. And I was in the hospital. I did end up returning to work, but more of a work from home sort of thing. And then it happened again in July. And in July, when it happened again, I had to kind of shut everything down. So in the beginning, they were kind of thinking it was more MS. We know that there's like a very strong autoimmune profile. But yeah, it has caused permanent neurological damage and a lot of physical issues as well.
Yeah, I just want to pause there and thank you for being here because I don't live in your body and I don't know what it takes to come and do this, preparing or just simply spending time on. So I really want to thank you for sharing your story. Because every time I talk to you, I also learn something new about your story as well, which I find fascinating and interesting because I don't think you ever asked for help. And not just you, this is endemic in so many people, but I don't remember you ever asking for help. And it struck me when Nicole said, do you want me to drive you to the hospital? And your answer is, no, I got this.
Yeah.
Why, like, this may seem like a really silly question, but why is asking for help difficult? Or why was asking
It
for help?
was at the time. And to be fair, Nicole and Tyler helped me a lot during that time. They were the only people who kind of knew what was going on, and they were with me all the time when I was forgetting people's names, or I was forgetting what was on the slides behind me in a class that I had taught a million times. So like, I think I am a high functioning person. So even when I was struggling, it maybe wasn't noticeable to other people. But from 2018 to 2019, that entire year, I was in a very, it was a very hard place for me physically. But I just kept pushing. And I did not feel worthy of asking for help. And to be fair, I have asked for help previously and maybe didn't get it. And so it became something that this hypervigilance and hyper independence was built into me at a very young age. And I'm sure I'm not exclusive of that. But like I said, that reward programming from a young age to be very independent and to be being rewarded through academics and awards and different things like that, you start creating this version of yourself where asking for help isn't part of it. It's not that I was purposefully not asking for help. I wasn't even aware at the time, right? I wasn't aware at the time. Not to mention, I was the person that a lot of people would go to for help, right? So it just didn't really dawn on me that I should maybe say, yeah, Nicole, can you drive me? Like, I'm sick. It just didn't dawn on me. And I'll never forget what she was wearing and the look on her face when she was trying to convince me. And I was like, girl, leave me alone. I'm fine. And I was completely not fine.
Right, right. That breaks my heart that, you mentioned that I'm not worthy to ask for help. Because I think a lot of us feel that way as well, is I don't want to burden someone, right? I'm not important enough to ask for help. When again, you're having, it sounds like a pretty major health crisis, and you're still burdening others.
Yeah.
Which, which going back to yogic perspective, it's that community, it's that, where are you helping others? You and I talked a lot about yoga, and I didn't realize how important the tenets of yoga. I didn't know what they were called. I just knew there was something about this that makes me happy and makes me a better person. As a clinician, did you weave in yoga into your practices? Were you aware of that? Was it unintentional, or was it just Amanda who's giving those things of yoga that are so important?
So here's the thing. I was practicing yoga all the way through my life, to some extent, and practicing asana was not, which is yoga postures. That's what I was practicing. Okay. I wasn't really, I didn't have the full depth and breadth of yoga at the time. And so it would have been, I think like 2017 or something. And well, when I first had the ankle surgery, I met Natasha Bolderies. And Natasha is a yoga therapist here where I live. And she actually opened the first yoga studio ever in Orangeville. And she is a beautiful, lovely woman who works a lot with somatics and stuff like that. So when I went to her yoga class, I needed something that was very low to the ground because I had just had ankle surgery. And as she started to speak, I realized that she is a therapist, but she's also a yoga teacher. And her and I just kind of bonded because I immediately was eating up everything that she was talking about. So Natasha is really the person who cultivated that yoga in me.
Can I just stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
When you said you were eating up, were you eating up for knowledge?
Yeah.
Like fact stuff, or were you eating up for filling your heart?
Both. She does both. Just her presence. She's like a fairy or something in my mind, like a little woodland nymph. But when you feel her, she has such depth and kindness, and and she has a presence about her and a wisdom inside of her that is just so, I'm wearing a t-shirt and funky socks. It's so not like Western yoga. It's not at all like what we see with she's just the antithesis of that. And I was like, well, I need to know what's going on here. And of course, because she was speaking therapeutic language, it was landing on me, but my heart and everything just felt better. And I was moving better. My ankle was getting better utilizing these practices. And her and I would talk a lot about using these types of things with my patients. And, I adopted from her this real deep understanding of the sun salutation, and how we used to always talk about how it incorporates all the fundamental movements like a fundamental movement screen. And so I started using that as a quick way to analyze movement patterns in my patients. And as I kind of moved through this, I was like, I need to become a certified yoga teacher. I need to know more about this. Not because I wanted to teach, but because as a person who's an academic with a westernized hat, you always feel like you need to have a certification in order to teach. And I mean, our notes are legal documents. So I want to make sure I had the right stuff. So that's when I started. I reached out to Lauren because that's where Natasha practiced at Cala. And originally, Lauren's class was full.
Lauren Wolf. Lauren Wolf from Cala. Yep.
And originally her teacher training was full. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's not a problem. And I was anyways going to Guyana with Team Canada. So I packed my bags to go to Guyana. I had a book of mine from a lady named Danielle Laporte. And it's about, discovering your, it's a pathway of discovery. I had this book for a very long time. It's called The Desire Map, and I hadn't actually done it. And so I brought it with me. It was just the one book I had. And as you know, when you're traveling with a team, you are run off your butt. But in the morning, I would wake up early in the morning and go with our equipment manager and go get fresh coconut water for the girls. So we would just carry jugs and get these coconut water poured in by this guy on the side of the street with a machete. Awesome. So we would haul all this coconut water back. And I had this little time in the morning. And so I was like, I'm going to just practice some yoga. But unfortunately, the only thing I had downloaded on my phone was Beyonce, like a Beyonce playlist. And the Wi-Fi wasn't working in the hotel. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this is all I have to listen to while I'm doing the yoga. So I organized the songs in a way that would allow me to do my practice. So I did my practice. And as I was out there, a couple of the girls were like, can we practice this? Can we do this with you? And I'm like, yeah, for sure you can. Come on out. Instead of going for a walk in the morning, the girls decided they wanted to practice yoga with me. And then the men's team decided they wanted to do it. Then some of the referees decided they want to do it. So I was at 7 a.m. in the middle of Georgetown in Guyana, busting out the Beyonce playlist for us to listen to. Oh my gosh. And I just remember how beautiful it was during Shavasana, and I had on certain music and I was like, listen to what she's saying in this. Close your eyes, allow your body to relax and listen to the words that she's saying. And this is right before you have to play, right? Find that courage within yourself. So really that's where it came from. And then as soon as I got home, Lauren was like, called me up and was like, I don't care. I just want you to be part of my yoga teacher training. I know.
So can I just ask you, when you were in Guyana, was it still asanas? Was it still poses? Or now is it starting to get a little bit deeper? Because now you're talking about listen to the words, not just groove to the words.
Oh, no, there was no grooving. I was telling them to listen to the words. I was like, listen to what she's saying here. Like, we have to find this power within us at this particular moment. When we are doing warrior pose, We are listening to who runs the world.
Right.
Listen to this, get it deep,
Right.
feel this
Right.
power within yourself. And I kind of arced the music to match the practice. And so there was parts of the music that really could resonate with what I was asking them to do in their bodies at this time. Now, this was yoga as I knew it to be. This was not yoga as I was taught, but it ended up, I was doing what I was taught later on to do anyways. So I feel like it was always in there.
Why do you think the team and the coaches and the refs then came out? What drew them to come out at 7 a.m. and listen to the words of Beyonce, or shall I say Amanda?
Yeah, I think they were. I mean, first of all, my weirdness, they know me. The weirdness, I can't hide it. I don't mask. I am just, this is who I am, right? So I feel like they were used to it and they were up anyways. And I remember one of my athletes on the men's team, a younger kid, one day I came in from my practice and he's like, Amanda, you are glowing. And I'm like, I'm feeling good, honey. I got a belly full of coconut water. I'm hydrated. I'm loosey goosey. And he was like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And
Yeah,
so I think it was just showing up on me. It
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
not in how I was being.
Yeah, it's almost like that energy, right? Like
Yeah.
you have this energy inside and you're, a glow around you. And when people get close enough, like I see a color kind of melding, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're melding with their energy and they're like, you got something and I want what you got.
Yeah. And I was like, come on out, let's do it. And then we were just having fun. And we had to do that type of movement in the morning, anyways. As the athletic therapist, I was like, yeah, I'll have to move your bodies. Like, we have to get up and get moving before breakfast. And it was just a beautiful sort of mini retreat. And like I said, when I came home, Lauren had called me and accepted me into the teacher training. And Lauren's teacher training at Kala is deep and it's beautiful and it's
Mhm.
authentic to the roots of yoga. So I started to really dig into what we know of the 8 limbs of yoga because her yoga teacher training does not focus on asana at all. It focuses on yoga philosophy.
Mhm.
So for me, I did it so that I could understand what those postures were doing or what they were doing when I was integrating them into my practice with either my team, with visualization, meditation, breath work, all of those things that I was integrating into my practice that I had seen Natasha do. I now was understanding why from a fundamental level.
Are you understanding a little bit more, taking you back to that 14-year-old kid in your friend's house where they're living yoga? Are you starting to be like, hey, that's what makes them different because now they're living their truth, for
Yes,
example.
for sure. That was it. And I mean, at the time, I don't think I had a very good understanding of Hinduism, but yoga is rooted in Hinduism. So, I mean, it was created in the Indus Valley thousands of years ago by Black and brown bodies. This is where this tradition came from. The first time we hear about yoga is in the Vedic texts that were written in like the 3rd to 6th century BCE. Like, this is old stuff. And I think when you are in the presence of Hindu people who practice and who devote their lives in that way, you see the yoga come through it because it's rooted in that, you know?
Mhm.
And we have to take off our hats as to think of what yoga is that we are being sold versus what yoga truthfully is at its roots.
Yeah.
Those are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate this. This is a common thing that, and I never judge anybody for why they do it because I always think in my studio they enter coming for the poses and they leave knowing there's something else.
Yeah.
And the more that they go into this, it doesn't matter about the designer clothes or the hair or the make or whatever, right? It just becomes I can practice this. I'm on a plane and now I can go within and I can breathe and I can, give that energy to others simply because I have been practicing it.
Mm.
And I see how, like, I think you always lived, just knowing you, I think you always lived that part of you. But I think because of that thirst for knowledge, it just became easier to kind of reconcile. I understand.
Hmm.
Um, can you, just going back a little bit to your illness,
Hmm.
you've described living with a chronic neurological disorder that affects your vision, speech, and breathing. How
Hmm.
has that changed your relationship with your body, particularly because you were a varsity athlete in university
Hmm.
and you went into athletic therapy because of your love for sports, I assume?
Yeah, for sure. It was wild. When I came out of the hospital, I was using a walker. Um, Everyone who knows me knows that I like to talk, and the stutter, I still do have the stutter and slur my words when I'm tired. But at the time, it was present permanently. I had to learn how to hold a pencil. So my handwriting doesn't look like it used to. And my handwriting changes depending on my symptoms of the day. Um, I couldn't control my body. I felt trapped. It was sort of like what I guess other people would experience as disassociation. Like I was in the body, but I could no longer control the body. And I don't know how, unless you have had that experience, it's very hard to explain to be in here and asking your body to move a certain way and it's not doing it. It was like my entire brain, the wires were completely scrambled. People would be talking to me and I couldn't understand really what they were saying, and or I would try to communicate back what I knew in my head, but my mouth was saying something different. It was incredibly frustrating, and lonely at that.
Mm.
Very lonely.
Because nobody knew what was going on. Is that correct? Like you were
Nobody really
struggling.
knew. No, nobody really knew. They knew it was autoimmune in nature. They kicked around a bunch of stuff like MS and stuff. Now I understand that I have multiple autoimmune disorders. So sometimes when you go into westernized medicine, they're looking for one particular thing. But I read the book When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, and it's really autoimmune. And my naturopath, Dr. Jelaine Koch, she was amazing. She's like, listen, it doesn't matter what it is. Autoimmune disease, we treat it the same way. We have to look at the cause, find the cause, treat the cause. It doesn't matter what the name of it is. We have neuroinflammation, we have to go after the neuroinflammation. So I started looking at my body from the lens of an athletic therapist.
Mm. Can you share a little more?
So I was find the cause, treat the cause. We know that this is inflammatory in nature. What can I do to reduce this inflammation? I am a studier, I am a researcher, right?
Hmm.
I believe in test retest.
Hmm.
I would always tell the students, you cannot ask your patient to do this with their arm, and then at the end of treatment, you don't ask them to do it again. Because how do you know if your treatment worked or not?
Right.
Test, retest,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like you have to do that. I had to do that for myself,
Yeah. So you became your own subject.
literally. I still am.
Hmm.
Yes. I
Hmm.
was 100% my own subject, and I was using a scientific lens to analyze my blood work, to analyze my understanding of my illness. And I realized why the medical community finds it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
One of the things I'm fascinated by is this blending of Eastern and Western medicine.
Mm.
And because I also wear kind of that research hat, like, prove to me that this works, which, the older I get, I'm like, proof is, you never prove anything.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile or how do you meld that Eastern and Western perspective together?
Well, I think when it becomes a very individual thing, right? There is a place for Western medicine for sure. But I am a sacred woman. I went through my rites of passage with Queen Afua. And I learned a lot about traditional African ways of living and life. This is the indigenous practices of my ancestors. And so a lot of the way I practice spirituality now is rooted in the teachings of the sacred woman, right? So I go back to the earth. I go back to plants. If I look at my people were stolen from Ghana and brought to Jamaica. And when I go to Jamaica and I look at the flora and the fauna there, I understand bush tea and bush medicine is something every Jamaican knows about. If you talk to any Jamaican person, they all know what roots tonic is. And roots tonic is some sort of blend of roots, very specific, that you were given when you were sick. My mother never reach for Buckley's first. If you're sick, she's going to give you ginger tea, and she's going to blend it up and juice it, a carrot, apple, and ginger juice together, and you drink it like a shot, which some people call fire water here. In Jamaica, it's not. You have roots tonic, you have bush tea. There was all these understandings of my culture that were more indigenous teachings than they were necessarily spiritual. So for me, I understood that trying to explain to a medical doctor what my naturopath wants, there's always going to be a fight there. But I knew personally in my body, the work that my naturopath was doing was working.
Right. Because you were listening to your body.
Because I was listening.
Yeah.
So I knew. And so I knew that I was never necessarily going to be able to get the two of them to talk or to work together. And it's very dependent on your doctor. But I knew it was working. So it was easy for me to understand that, yes, Western medicine is great, but Western medicine is also dictated by where the money is. Right. And what people are studying and all this different types of stuff. Right. There's a million ways to skin a cat, and you kind of need to feel it for yourself. What works.
And I think that, I'm speaking for you, but this is what I'm hearing is because you were so in tune with your body, you could do that test retest and know that, hey, this is working. And maybe I'm going to try something else and it's not working. Yeah. But instead of relying on someone else, you had the agency and the autonomy to be able to advocate for yourself and to learn because you are a learner.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What a beautiful gift you've given. After your illness, you began using pranayama to help regulate your breathing and diaphragm spasms. Even when the anesthesiologist cautioned you against certain practices. Can you share a little bit more about reclaiming? What does reclaiming your breath mean to you? Because you mentioned that was difficult with your illness.
It was so hard. So I was breathing with a stutter kind of because my diaphragm, and it still does this certain times, it would either spasm or it would fibrillate. Like I would get catches in my side and I couldn't take a deep breath. My breath was like a staccato. And I knew pranayama is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And that's where I wanted to start because yoga asana, as we know it, was not a place I could start at the point. I could barely even sit up. So I would prop myself up. And every athletic therapist has a thing. As like Joe Rotella, it was always the first rib. The first rib was the key to the world for this man. So for me, as a practitioner, I believe that the diaphragm is the key to the universe. That is Amanda's philosophy. That is not necessarily academic truth. Okay. It's just, so I was like, girl, trust your own instincts. This is where you have to go. I've got to reclaim the breath first. So that's where I started. I started with pranayama. I started with different breathwork practices, which led me into Kundalini yoga, which I'm a hatha practitioner, but I'm also a Kundalini practitioner, although I am not a Kundalini teacher. So a lot of people think different things about Kundalini, and I'll let them have their own opinions. But one thing that they do nail down is pranayama. You spend a lot of time controlling the breath and learning how to control the breath. Of course, once again, I was once very lucky that Kala Yoga had a very experienced Kundalini teacher named Elaine O'Sullivan. She still practices. You can get her online if you need to. But Elaine O'Sullivan was an amazing practitioner. So somebody that I could lean on for some wisdom as to where to start with that. And you just go after the knowledge. I knew what I needed to do, and I knew what felt good in my body after doing it. So
Yeah.
I built a practice of breath work.
Again, you're tapping into what is working. What is working? What do I need? And listening to yourself. I can't, you and I both know this because, well, I assume you know this, just because this is the nature of the beast. As healthcare practitioners, one of the things that I always try and ask my clients is, what works for you? What is working for you now? And let's keep that going.
Yeah.
Um, because it's important that you have that autonomy, that ability to make decisions instead of
Mhm.
someone saying, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
You're actually taking control of your health.
100%. And that's really how I utilized um, parts of yoga and parts of the 8 limbs of yoga in order to, I still do this every day,
Yeah.
right? I still practice these 8 limbs every day as a means to help my body heal.
Yeah.
And even the idea of, concentration, you know, that is one of the 8 limbs of yoga.
Hmm.
And just lying in bed before I wake up in the morning and concentrating on how my body is feeling in this moment informs me on how I'm going to move through the day that day, because my body changes day to day, hour to hour. I am a very sensitive flower.
Hmm.
And I know that about myself. I can't just jump up and get out of bed and expect, I can't. So I
Hmm.
have to take that time in the morning to check in with myself and see what I need. And I go through my Rolodex of knowledge that I've acquired over the years, and I pull in practices that work for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I see on your Facebook account, you're very spiritual and you've got a lot of things that you do to help you. And I appreciate that so much. It's a good lesson for me to hear is, even before you step out of bed, what do you need today? And
Mhm.
honor that. Maybe today's a day where I can do something more active, or maybe today's not.
Mhm.
And giving yourself permission to be able to honor your body and what it requires.
Yes,
That's
but also
beautiful.
honor the frustration that comes. That you sometimes I lie there and I have things that I need to do and I can't. So this is where the asking for help. This is where, okay, today is a day I have to go to the pool with my son. I have to put on earplugs. I have to wear sunglasses or a visor. I can't be in this environment. I'm honest with the parents that are around me that help to support me and help guide me up the stairs or down the stairs or come with me to the bathroom when I need help or support, right?
Mm.
Like I'm just very open now with my limitations.
Mm. But you know what, honestly, I think by asking for help, you're actually blessing others,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like I think when I used to work with individuals in homeless shelters, and I always felt guilty because I'm like, oh, I'm the one that's being blessed,
Mm-hmm.
which, I never ever asked them or had this conversation, but it was because of that reciprocity. It's
Mm-hmm.
you're honoring me by allowing me to help you, which was such a blessing to me. So please don't stop asking for help because those people are so honored to help you. I know, and you're never a burden. Like, please, listeners, you are never a burden to anybody.
You're never.
Amanda, one of the things that I know about you is you have a very big heart for advocacy and inclusion.
Mm.
How has your lived experience impacted your ability to be compassionate or see compassion in both healthcare and other ways?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm biracial. So I think I was born with a foot in both sides and trying to reconcile who I was as a person and who am I. Um, like in this context of I was born in Canada, I'm not Indigenous to here. I have a mother who is Indigenous to Jamaica and a father who is Indigenous to England. They're not Indigenous to here. But both of my parents had traveled all over Canada and were very aware of a lot of different things of Canadian culture. So when I was born into this space where I had to already start asking questions. They were just sort of there all the time, right? And so as I move through the world, the struggles that I had, like my friends, I had Jewish friends, I had Hindu friends, I had Portuguese friends that were deeply super duper Catholic. I had friends who were Greek Orthodox. I loved and cared for all of these people.
Yeah.
And I think through practicing true yoga and the roots of yoga, I did study some yogic work with Susanna Barkataki, who really talks about the real deep roots of yoga and how it informs our life decisions and choices. And advocacy has always been a part of me. I cannot stand for people disrespecting and taking away. Or here's the thing, it's people not recognizing others as themselves. There's
Yep.
this separation that it doesn't exist. It's not real. It is a man-made construct, this separation. Why do I share so much DNA with a tree if a tree is so much different than I am?
Right. Right.
And I can't ignore the fact that when I'm around certain trees, I have a certain vibe. I feel
Right.
that energy, and it feels different to me than I'm in a forest with different trees,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel different around certain animals than I do with other animals,
Right. Right.
right?
And-
There's an understanding that we are all interconnected that I feel like I've always had. But there is also an understanding and a knowledge that the world that we live in does not treat us as such.
Right. And I think understanding it goes back to that picture, man. I don't know when that picture came out of the skeletons, right? And all you see is skeletons, and then the last one, it doesn't have a lower leg, and it's like, there's a sign over top, Australian, English, Canadian, US, South African, pirate, because we're all the same. Like,
Yeah.
we share so much that are the same. We share more similarities than we do differences. Yet we focus on those differences sometimes. Amanda, I'm always sensitive to the time, but for someone listening who might be living with invisible pain or grappling with a loss of identity, what would you want them to know?
I have always, part of my research and my master's was about self-reflection and how self-reflection improves therapeutic outcomes for your patients, because knowing yourself and being able to show up as a clear space helps you treat better.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing yourself is a huge piece of allowing yourself to let go of the identity that you thought was you.
Right.
So the deeper you ask, and you don't need to be someone who practices yoga to practice self-reflection. Just because it is a part of yoga does not mean it's not a part of Christianity, does not mean it's not a part of Islam and a Muslim faith. It doesn't mean that it's not a part of whatever. So no matter who is listening to this, if you can stop and deeply reflect on what it is that you want, truly want, not what you don't want, but what it is that you truly want. How are you feeling in this moment? Is this environment nurturing you or not? These are really simple questions that we don't ask. Now, obviously, the deeper you get and the more, I have been through an immense amount of suffering, not just through my illness, but this past year has been incredibly difficult for myself and my family. And there comes a point where you start asking, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, who am I at the core of myself? And that's a deep question. That's a meditation. And that's a question that I hope every person who's listening asks themselves and understands that it'll take a lifetime to answer.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you ask yourself that question, the closer you get to understanding who you are, minus all of these things that the world is telling you need to be. And when you understand that, that's where the advocacy comes from, because you understand that there isn't a they, them, there's an us. And you cannot separate yourself. Just like you can't just take asana and say you are a yoga practitioner.
Right.
You need to understand the entirety of the thing, and you need to understand the entirety of yourself.
Mm-hmm. You are such a wise woman. Honestly, you are. Every time I talk to you, I just feel like listening. Yeah, I always feel like you're just the consummate teacher that I'm like, okay, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm ready to take notes now every time I talk to you. And I could just, listen to you speak about your words of wisdom. Amanda, when you think about the inner practice,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean to you?
It is kind of what I was just talking about. But we need to understand that as human beings, we are living a very real life. And there's very real people experiencing a lot of a different world than what we are experiencing. And the inner practice is knowing yourself well enough to take that inner practice and turn it into outer practice.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be an outward expression. It needs to be an outward pouring of love and compassion. When you actually have that type of love and compassion for yourself, you want that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard in this world, Jackie. It is hard in this world. There's a lot of things asking you to take your attention to 1,000 different places. But when you stop and give yourself the gift of an inner practice, that deep knowing turns into outward love.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it shows up in the world. So I am thankful for you doing this podcast and asking people their stories, because the more people listen, the more they'll hear that love, and it gives them like a little flashlight to kind of start looking inside.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Can I ask you one final question? And this is the question
Yeah.
that I often end with because I reflect a lot about this.
Mm,
If you were to talk to your younger self,
mm,
knowing your journey, what
mm.
would you tell your younger self?
Don't be afraid.
What do you mean by that?
A lot of times the hermit card in tarot comes to mind. Um, I get a little a bit emotional when I think about it, because I think a lot of people see me and think of me as um, sort of this light. But if you know the hermit card in tarot, you see this dark figure carrying this little lantern with the star in it. And I think a lot of people thought of me as that little star. They didn't see the entirety of me. And the entirety of me is walking through this darkness and this
Mm-hmm.
dirt. And the younger me was a little bit afraid. I was
Mm-hmm.
clinging to that light. I was clinging to the light. Now I realize that light is there for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to come walk through the darkness with me and not to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
The world is suffering, but there's beauty and there's peace in this darkness. Don't be afraid. There's going to be scary parts on your path, but
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid.
Amanda, I can feel we're online here, but I can feel the emotion like inside me. So I'm desperately trying to keep it together. So,
Oh, let it out, girl.
oh, I can't.
I'm
Amanda, thank
crying.
you. Oh, I'm gonna keep it together, and then when I end, I'll cry. But that's okay, because we're allowed to do that. Amanda, I can't thank you enough for your words of wisdom. I talk to so many former students, and your name still keeps coming up. You have such a genuine heart, compassion, and even though you're not in an official teaching capacity, this podcast and so much others, and your Facebook sites and your social media rings true with heart and compassion and love and peace. Girl, you got a lot of work still ahead of you. And it's not your mission in life, but you're impacting so many, honestly.
Thank you. When we talk about the yoga and the different types of yoga, there's a book by Ram Dass called Paths to God. And in this, we understand that no matter what path you take to God or self, or however you want to describe it, you eventually encapsulate all the other paths. So jnana yoga, or the knowledge seeking, and this idea of this thirst for knowledge that I have been born with, is something that I just gift. Mm-hmm. I don't own this knowledge. I have acquired it from wisdom from other people, and I infuse it with what I've gone through in my own life. And this hardships that I've gone through, this is why I say don't be afraid, because the hardships beget the wisdom. Mm-hmm. And the wisdom is something I can just turn around and reshare, because that's what it's meant to do.
Right, right. You know, the teacher, your teachers, you have become one of those teachers. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for everything that you have given me today, and that you've given me on the time that I've known you. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate you. Satnam, my friend.
Amanda, thank you for sharing your story, your courage, and your light. I am so appreciative of your wisdom and guidance. You have such a gift that you have shared with me so many times, and now you've shared with so many others. This gift in speaking, expressing, and presence. Amanda's story is a beautiful reminder that healing doesn't always mean returning to what was. Sometimes it's about meeting what is with tenderness and truth. Her path from athletic therapist to yoga practitioner, from helping others to learning how to help herself, invites us all to consider what it means to live with both resilience and grace. This episode of The Inner Practice was sponsored by Jackie Vandertoon therapy that connects both the mind and the body. And you can help support this podcast by buying me a coffee. Each one helps to offset the costs of this production. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, or follow. And if you'd like to sponsor a future episode, you can reach me through my website, found in the show notes. Until next time, may you find a moment to pause, to breathe, and connect with your own inner practice. I'm Jackie Vandertoon. Thank you for joining us today.